The chandeliers glowed softly, casting warm light across the ballroom. It was the kind of evening many people remembered for years. Black suits, gentle music, and conversations that felt important, even when they weren't. Robert Hayes stood near the edge of the room, holding a glass of iced tea. He hadn't touched it. At 56, Robert had learned something simple about life. You don't have to belong everywhere you're invited. Still, he showed up. For his daughter. For his work. For the version of himself he was still learning to become. He adjusted his jacket, a little worn at the cuffs, but clean pressed, respectable. Robert was a widower. A quiet man. The kind who fixed things instead of talking about them. Across the room stood Evelyn Carter. She was elegant, poised, her silver earrings catching the light every time she turned her head. In her early 50s, Evelyn had built her company from the ground up. People admired her strength. But strength, Robert knew, often comes from surviving things no one sees. Her dark hair was pulled neatly into a low bun, her posture straight, her expression calm. But her eyes, they kept drifting toward a man standing near the bar. The man looked comfortable there. Confident. Like someone who had once been part of her life, and never quite left it behind. Robert noticed. Not out of curiosity, but out of recognition. He had worn that same look once, years ago, after losing his wife. That quiet mix of memory, and something unresolved. Mr. Hayes. Her voice was soft, but steady. Robert turned. Evelyn stood beside him now. Up close she seemed different. Less distant. More real. You're not enjoying the evening? She asked gently. Robert gave a small smile. I enjoy watching people more than being one of them. She nodded, as if she understood that completely. After a moment, she spoke again. I need a small favor. There was a pause. The kind that carries more than just words. My former partner is here tonight, she said quietly. I didn't expect it, but here we are. Robert glanced briefly toward the man. Then back at her. I see. She hesitated, just for a second. Would you dance with me? He nodded without hesitation. But then she added softly. And if he's watching, perhaps it would help if it looked like something more. Robert was still for a moment. Not offended. Not shocked. Just thoughtful. He looked at her carefully. At the calm surface, and the slight tension in her hands. This isn't about the dance, he said quietly. Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't need to. Robert set his glass down. I'll dance with you, he said gently. But I won't pretend something that isn't true. For a moment, she looked almost surprised. Not angry. Just unprepared. I don't need much, she said, her voice softer now. Just something to show him I've moved on. Robert shook his head slightly. People don't move on by showing someone else, he said. They move on by being at peace when no one's watching. The music played on. Soft. Steady, patient. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. And something in her expression shifted. Not dramatically. Just enough. Then, just the dance, she said. Robert nodded. Just the dance. They stepped onto the floor together. The music was slow, familiar. The kind that reminded people of younger days. Of school dances and weddings, and moments when life felt simpler. Robert's hand rested lightly at her back. Respectful. Careful. He led gently, without pressure. For a while, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Sometimes silence is where the truth lies. After a few moments, Evelyn spoke quietly. You've done this before. Robert smiled faintly. A long time ago. With your wife? She asked. He nodded. She liked dancing more than I did, he said. But I learned, because it made her happy. A small pause. And after she passed, I stopped. Evelyn's expression softened. I'm sorry. He gave a gentle nod. Life doesn't ask us if we're ready, he said. It just keeps moving. They turned slowly across the floor. The room around them faded into soft shapes and quiet sound. What made you come tonight? She asked. My daughter, he said. She told me. Dad, you don't have to feel ready. Just don, ti steh stuck. Evelyn let out a soft breath. That sounds like good advice. It is, Robert said. Though I'm still learning how to follow it. Across the room, the man by the bar was still watching. But something had changed. Evelyn wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. Her shoulders had relaxed. Her steps had slowed. You know, she said quietly, I spent years trying to look strong.
Robert nodded.
Most people do. But tonight, she continued, I think I just needed to feel honest. The music softened, nearing its end. Robert guided her gently through the final steps.
No grand gestures. No performance. Just a simple, steady presence.
When the music stopped, they stepped apart.
Not awkwardly. Not hurried.
Just naturally.
Thank you, Evelyn said. For the dance.
For the honesty, she replied.
Robert smiled.
Sometimes kindness isn't giving people what they ask for, he said. It's giving them what helps them stand on their own. Evelyn looked across the room once more. At the man who had once been part of her life.
Then, she looked away.
Not with anger. Not with regret.
Just with acceptance.
Would you like some tea? Robert asked after a moment. She smiled softly.
I would.
They walked together toward the quieter side of the room. Two people, no longer trying to prove anything. Just sharing a simple moment.
And sometimes,
that's where life changes. Not in the grand gestures. Not in the things others see. But in the quiet decisions.
To be honest. To be kind.
And to let the past gently rest where it belongs. The tea was warm, simple, comforting. Robert and Evelyn sat at a small table near the window, away from the music, away from the noise.
For a while, they didn't speak.
Not because they had nothing to say, but because neither of them felt the need to rush it. You know, Evelyn said softly, I spent years trying to win conversations that were already over. Robert nodded gently. That takes time to understand, he replied. And even more time to accept. She looked down at her cup, then back up. Tonight, I almost became that version of myself again. Robert gave a small, knowing smile.
But you didn't.
Across the room, her former partner had already left.
No scene. No goodbye. Just gone. And somehow, that felt right.
Evelyn let out a slow breath. I thought closure had to come from him, she said. Robert shook his head lightly. Most of the time, it comes from us. A quiet stillness settled between them.
Not empty. Just peaceful.
Your daughter, Evelyn said after a moment. She sounds wise. Robert smiled, a little more warmly this time. She's taught me more than I ever taught her. Evelyn stood slowly.
Not rushed. Not uncertain. Just steady. I think, she said.
I'm finally ready to stop looking backward.
Robert nodded. That's enough, he said.
It doesn't have to be anything more than that.
She paused, then looked at him.
Would you like to have dinner sometime? No expectations. Just conversation. Robert considered it for a brief moment.
Then he smiled. Idee like that.
Sometimes, life doesn't begin again with a grand moment. No music.
No spotlight.
Just a quiet invitation. And the courage to say yes. And in that gentle, ordinary way, two people who had known loss chose not to pretend anymore. They chose honesty.
They chose peace.
And maybe, just maybe, they chose the beginning of something real.